They need to be taught that emotions are not negative or positive. Emotions simply are emotions, and it doesn't make them a bad person because they feel anger, because they feel sad, or because they miss their parent that's not there, even though their other parent that is there is telling them that they shouldn't be. They don't need more judgment. They need guidance. They need love. They need affection. And if you don't know how to do this, it's your responsibility as an adult to fucking figure it out. Good morning and welcome to Old Man Energy. I'm your host, Flint Anderson. If this is your first time with us, then thank you for joining us. And if you are back for more, I'm glad you found some value and a reason to come back. As always, like, share, and subscribe down below. And take time to send this to someone that you think will benefit from it. This is the follow-up episode. This is coming in at episode 88 of the Old Man Energy podcast, and it ties in with episode 87. Last week's episode was about adults' dreams and how we tend to put them onto our children. Some of the clips from this got a little heated, and TikTok specifically, just parents talking about children, why they do what they do with children. And it really wasn't the point of the episode, but those particular clips really ignited something. And it's been some stuff that I've needed to talk about for a long time. So we're going to dive right in and hope you guys find some value. This episode is about our children. And for those of you that don't know my pedigree, I've spent my entire adult life raising other men's children and some other women's children. We have 7. And my wife and I made that choice. She had some kids when we got married. We adopted more from the state and just had a very blended family, a very happy family. I wish they all got along now, but the reality is with a family this big, there's going to be some strife and some issues and some things that happen and come up over the years. It's normal. It's life. We don't pretend everything is perfect, but we do admit that our family is real and that it's normal. There was a lot going into that growing up. There was a lot of heartache, and the adoption and raising these children is without a doubt one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, both emotionally and physically, financially, whatever. It doesn't matter. Can't say that I was perfect at it because I didn't really know what I was doing. Just knew that I wanted to be a dad, but I did the best that I could. And I hope that each and every one of you out there takes that message to heart and does the same thing with your children, whether they're your biological children, whether they're stepchildren, whether they're adopted children. It doesn't matter. Whether there's somebody that looks forward and up to you as a mentor, you are leading somebody. You don't know. You don't know who's watching. You don't know what impact you're making on a child's life. I'm going to integrate some stories from my kids. I'm going to integrate some stories from my own childhood. I'm going to leave names out. I'm going to integrate some stories that people have shared with me because not all these stories are, the full stories are not mine to tell, but I'm going to use these examples. Every single one of them that I'm talking about here is real and has either happened to me or I watched it happen as a parent through one of my children. Adults, as adults, we make choices, and we're forced to make choices every day. And there are consequences for those choices. And children are innocent, but they suffer the consequences from those choices that we make every day as adults. And they're helpless. They have no way to alter the outcome from those, but they suffer 100% of the consequences and sometimes more. I come from a broken home. That's not been a secret. My mother and father separated when I was very young. My father was not there until I was a teenager, and it created some very interesting things, which I'm going to share moving later. But more importantly, we were poor. We didn't have anything. My mother did the best she could raising us, and grandparents helped. People stepped in, but there were still consequences that I had to face through no choice of my own. It really shaped one of the fundamental things that I look at as reality. And I ended up leaving home at 16, living on my own, because the struggle of living on my own was easier than facing the consequences for choices that I had no say in from either one of my parents. And my dad was back in the picture at that point. The suffering and the helplessness and that feeling of just not being able to do anything and watching your adult parents suffer or watching your siblings suffer and knowing you can't do anything about it is something that I wouldn't wish on any adult, let alone any child. And I remember that daily, especially when I was a young teenager and when I started to become aware of what was going on. It was a challenge. Emotionally, it was devastating, and it still shapes the way I maintain things to this day. I still struggle, even in my 50s, with the violent emotional reaction to certain things just that are left over from that. So remember, parents, these scars that we're putting on our children, they will remember and they will carry forward. And I spend a lot of time talking about making memories with your children and loving them and being close to them. And I'm not going to hit on that as hard this episode, but everything that you do, that's the foundation. Take Give your children hugs. Take time to give them safe space. And I don't mean a room where you can go and just be away from the world. I mean, give them a hug. Take their pressure for a little while onto you and let them be kids. Let them relax. Let them melt into you. And for a little while, just be safe, especially if they are a traumatized child, if they come from a broken home, if they come from a hard place. If you're the person that that child looks to for safety, then take that very seriously and be that person that they need. And sometimes it's just as simple as a hug. It's just as simple as letting them know that everything will be okay, letting them hear that you believe in them and that you love them. That's all it takes. Because children ultimately, while they're very, very complicated as they grow up, they are very simple when it comes to emotion. And they don't have any way to regulate these emotions. Sometimes they just need a break. And we call it all kinds of things, overstimulation and this and that. And we look for all this artificial input to give these children, to give them quote unquote coping skills. And what they really need is just a parent who's there, who loves them. And if you come from a broken home and you're the parent that's their primary caregiver, then show them that love and affection. Tell them you love them. Hug them. Show them you love them. And if you come from a broken home, or you're a parent of children in a broken home, and you're the parent that does not have your children full time, well, you know what? You get to be the fun parent, as some of the comments have said, but you need to be as active in that child's life as possible so you don't show up as a fun parent, because you can only bring them candy and cakes and take them fun places so many times if you're showing up consistently. Before you've got to experience real life with them. And it's more important that they understand real life from both perspectives than it is that it's always doing fun stuff or always doing this or always doing that. We'll get into that more in a little bit. But today I want to talk about the invisible emotional injuries that children carry long after they've grown up and into adulthood. And it affects their behavior, paying the consequences even as an adult for somebody else's actions. And I've talked about this in a relationship. When you have no input on the decision or you don't get to make the final decision is something that we don't teach in the world anymore. And we should. We should teach how to be a team moving forward, how to be a leader moving forward for your children and for your family. That's a different episode, which I will cover later. One thing I want to get out of the way right now, up front. Being a deadbeat parent is not gender specific. It's easy to say, oh, there's a deadbeat dads out there and this and that. Well, you know what? That rhymes and it fits perfectly into iambic pentameter, so it's easy to remember. But there are just as many deadbeat mothers out there as there are deadbeat fathers. No, I don't have statistics on this. I'm speaking from experience. I'm speaking from raising children with both. So we can't just blanket, oh, all men are evil. All dads of divorce are evil. Statistically saying, most women end up with primary custody of the children for whatever reason. And I'm not going to get into the skewedness of the courts or how all of that goes. I'm not going to get into that because that in and of itself would take hours to unpack. What I am going to say is that there are just as many bad mothers out there that leave as there are bad fathers. Difference is most of the fathers out there that are raising their children are not taking time to jump online and bitch about it. They're actually raising their children. They're not trying to demonize their ex and throw them under the bus. And again, maybe there's some guys out there that do that. But in my experience and what I've seen online and what the research that Des and I have done, women far outnumber the number of men that get online and bitch about the fact that they're a single mother raising their kids. There's a lot of vitriol out there and a lot of anger going both sides. So one thing I'm going to talk about here is, remember, it's not deadbeat dads, it's not deadbeat moms, it's deadbeat parents. It's when one parent chooses to emotionally, physically, and financially check out of a child's life, they become a deadbeat. And that starts to impact that child immediately. It doesn't take a long time. It starts immediately. Both parents can abandon their children. Both parents can weaponize their children. Both parents can walk out of a relationship and try and manipulate their children emotionally to pay some sort of consequence for the hate, the anger, and the pain that the other parent caused them. And this happens all too often. This is not a gender war, folks. This is a war on our children, and we need to stop it. We need to stop it right now. If you are this parent and you are the one that's hitting home, or more directly, if this statement pisses you off, you're probably that parent. Stop it. Your children need to come first, period. That's it. Put your children first, let go of all that anger, and do whatever you have to do to protect them. If you singularly make every choice in your life about how to make your child's life as best as humanly possible, your life will change, but more importantly, that child's life will change. But you know what? You're going to have to grow up and quit acting like a petulant teenager. You're going to have to act like an adult and be the leader that your children need, whether they live with you or not. And if you only have a few hours a week with them, then spend that few hours teaching them every life lesson you possibly can and loving them and showing them that life is not all sunshine and roses and it's not all candy and Chuck E. Cheese, that it's struggle and that they need skills that only you can teach them on how to struggle and how to move forward, and teach them that you love them, but you love them with strength. Show them that they are not a consequence of anger and hatred. Show your children that they are the prize, that they, no matter whether you get along with their mother or their father or not, that they are the value in that relationship. And even if that relationship no longer exists, the value to you exists. And yes, children are insanely valuable. They are our future. And it's up to us to quit damaging them and quit punishing them for sins that we imagine that our other spouse made. And you know what? They may be valid and they may be realistic, but the child had nothing to do with any of that. Even the teenagers that start to act out on some of these emotions, they didn't have anything to do with what you and your spouse went through whenever you broke up, and we have to stop this. Again, this is not a gender-specific role. I'm going to share one thing that this is a personal story. This is hard for me to share, but I think it's relevant. This was a justification for keeping their children from the other parent. Well, logic is backwards. It doesn't make any sense. Let me share this story first, and I'm avoiding it because it's painful. I don't want to talk about it. When I was growing up, I don't remember how old I was, but I remember this time like it was yesterday. I don't know if I've ever shared this story with anybody but Des before, but I remember trying to figure out why my dad wasn't there. And I'd ask my mom, and I'd ask my grandparents who were his parents where he was. And there was a time when nobody really knew where he was, or if they did, they weren't telling me. He didn't help. I knew that we didn't have any money. I was the poor kid. I was perpetually a poor kid and a nerd. So I checked all the boxes for getting bullied and made fun of at school. And I had it in my head that my dad was this great superstar. And I would pick up on little things. Like at one point I heard somewhere that he was logging in Hawaii or in the Pacific Northwest. So I had this great idea that my dad was this great big lumberjack guy. And granted, my dad's a pretty big dude and he's pretty strong. The story might be true, it might not be true. I have no idea. And my family, parents specifically, they still hate each other to this day. They don't talk about shit from when we were kids. But I remember having this idea that maybe he was just too busy, and maybe when he came back that he was going to bring all this money and things were going to be good, and we weren't going to struggle anymore. And I remember I would voice this in different ways to my mom, and my mom is probably the least confrontational person on the planet, and she got to the point where she just had enough of it. So she told me one night, she was sitting in the living room, and she said, I want you to go in your bedroom, and I want you to bring out everything that your dad has purchased for you, because I kept telling her, well, Dad's going to do this, Dad's going to do that. And I brought out one thing. That was a toy erector set. And for those of you young kids, I'll give you a minute to go and look up what erector set means. I loved that toy. Now, come to find out later, I liked it because I could build different things out of it. But I thought I loved it because my dad gave it to me. And then she said, well, I want you to go in there and I want you to bring everything that I've purchased or that your grandparents have purchased for you. And I came back out and I said, well, I can't. It'd be the whole room. And at a very young age, I learned a very powerful lesson that day. And I learned that what I believed was the truth just wasn't. Turns out to find out later in life that my grandparents had purchased that erector set too because I wanted it so badly. Just said it was from him. This story affects me to this day, and it affects me to this day because that was one of the days that I realized that I had this idea in my head and not everything that I believed, even as a child, was true. And not everything that I believed was going to happen was true, that I couldn't impact other people's actions. And that forced me to accept the fact that my dad was not coming back. And later, emotionally, that hit like a tidal wave. And later, I had to realize and accept the fact that it was his choice not to come. He knew he could make phone calls. He just didn't. He could come visit. He didn't. He could send money to help, because I knew even at that point that I knew that we didn't have any. I didn't know for sure what it was, but I knew that we didn't have any. He didn't. And none of this was from my mother throwing him under the bus. And don't get me wrong, my mother had an insane amount of vitriol for my father, but that really was hidden very well until much later in life. She just mostly didn't say anything, and she let us figure stuff out for ourselves. I'm not sure if that was the right answer or not, but it's my story. It's what happened. This is the defensive child reflex. If you want to do some searching and figure out what that means, this is children don't know how to manage our emotions, and I'm including myself as a child because of that story. Children don't know how to manage their emotions, and we can't, for some reason, as adults, figure out why they want to protect the parent who hurts them. It's the only way that they understand how to regulate this. And the thing is, when regulating emotions, children are smart. Children try and figure things out. a lot of times they'll come up with really interesting solutions to problems that we never would have thought of because we're taught how things work. Well, this works emotionally too. So while that would be twisted and emotional hoops for us to go through for children, this honestly makes sense. But it's only because accepting the truth is too painful. Because if you're going to accept the fact that your absent parent doesn't want you, you're not important enough for them to come back and visit or even to call. You have to accept that there's something wrong with you and you start to blame yourself. So instead, you create this persona of this good person who's just doing way more important stuff than you. And that looks odd to an adult because way more important stuff than children to children is not things that are important to adults. So they rewrite their own reality in order to survive emotionally the pain of that absent parent. And it ends up looking like defense to adults. And as adults, it's important that you do not react in anger and you try and help these children regulate their emotions that they don't even know that they're dealing with. It's not fair. And it's not fair that as parents we have to do this, or as foster parents or as adoptive parents that you have to do this. But it's also not fair that these children are suffering, that this other parent has put them into this place that they don't have any ability to control and they have no control over. And that feeling of desperation and helplessness and abandonment is so poignant that I could barely talk about this story to this day. And if you've grown up in any of these situations, you have this similar story. I have a couple of them from childhood, and they impact me in ways that I still don't understand. And I told Des last night, I've given up at my age on trying to fix these things and just started doing what I know the correct adult response to do is, and maybe it'll go away. Maybe it won't, but either way, I can do it long enough until it no longer matters anyway. But children inevitably in these situations always blame themselves. They always think that there must be something wrong with them, and that's why the parent doesn't come around. I'm going to give you two examples, additional examples, that will help with this misgendering, or not misgendering, God, I can't believe I just said that out loud, that will help with this non-gender specific idea. One of our children was impacted by this greatly. Their mother visited them sort of regularly, lived very close, a few blocks from us. Had to have supervised visitation, but we had arranged for the supervision to be at our house. There was always somebody home. Des or myself was there. So there was basically, she could come whenever she chose to, and she lived within walking distance of us. He saw her maybe once every 6 to 9 months, and every time he saw her, she was either drunk or high. This is not a slam. Some people have their demons, but she couldn't let it go long enough to visit her kid. And she wouldn't take the time to come and visit her child on a regular basis. We would make it a point to go over there with him to her house, but after a while that stopped because a lot of times she'd be asleep or passed out on the couch. It just really wasn't a great visit. So that shifted to ours. And every time she showed up, even living that closely and having unlimited access, or basically unlimited access to her kiddo, she would show up with the game systems, with the big TV, with all the different things to try and buy the affection. Understand, in this particular case, there was no other parent in the picture. Biological dad was out of the picture. And so it was just her. And it was always promises. Listen, I'm gonna do what I need to do. I've been on track. We're going to be back. We're going to be a big, happy family again. Understand, this kid had been in the system since he was 5. He was now a teenager, and a thriving teenager at our house. Not because our house was some wonderful, beautiful environment, but we did understand how to treat children, but because there was some stability there. And this kiddo and this man now has some of the best coping skills that I've ever seen in my entire life in dealing with the trauma that he dealt with as a child. But we would watch this happen. And we could make a choice. We could say, okay, well, you can't be around him when you're high, or you can't be around him and make these false promises and give her all these rules. But then that would have transferred that anger, that frustration, that resentment to us. We had the choice to either allow him to spend time with his mother, which he probably wasn't going to have a long time with her because of the destructive path that he was on, and help him deal emotionally with the fallout on the backside, and learn how to process those emotions of having parents or family or siblings or whoever, in his case it was all of them, in these situations, or try and protect him because it made our lives easier, and not let them around unless they jumped through a million hoops. We chose the second, and I to this day believe it was the right choice. It wasn't easy because there was always fallout. There was always disappointment. But this young man was so used to disappointment at this point that it just looked like normalcy in his eyes. And he never let his spirit for life die, and I admire him to this day for the way that he lives his life. And he'll break that cycle if he hasn't already, and I believe he has. When he does have children, he's going to be an incredibly good dad. All right. Well, that's the mother's story. One of our other children, one of a sibling group that we adopted, we got them very young. He was old enough to know emotionally, maybe not regulate everything, but he was old enough to know what was going on. his visitation from the state was mandated. His parents had to do specific things to be able to visit with him. It was in a state-run supervised visitation facility. The last one that we took him to, and I may be conflating this because this one hurts. The last one that we took him to, he recognized the neighborhood, as shitty as it was. He knew where we were going. And he even recognized this well after he was a small child, and he was young, maybe 3 or 4. I don't remember exactly how old he was. But he knew where we were going. He recognized the house. He started to get excited. His mother never showed up to these visitations, not once. His biological mother, I should say, Des is his mother. He calls her that to this day. Bio dad showed up a couple of times when he wasn't in jail or arrested. The first time he showed up with a truck or a present, it was either around his birthday or Christmas. Again, it's a long time ago. I don't remember. I just remember the emotional impact of the last one. The last visit, he knew where we were going. He started to get excited because he was going to see his dad. And went in, checked him into the room, and I don't know if you know how supervised state visitation works, but you check it in, drop him off with a social worker, and then you leave. And usually you leave before the other parent shows up, or the parent shows up and comes in a different door, so that there's no interaction. And even though we were relative caregivers, we were still treated as foster parents, which is fine. Follow the rules, whatever. We want him to have a relationship with his biological parents. And at this time, the goal was still reunification for them. This is the episode, or the beginning of what changed that. We started to leave, and the assistant stopped us and said, "No, you guys wait out here in the lobby. Other parents not here yet." So we waited. It seemed like forever, maybe 15, 20 minutes. They couldn't get a hold of him. They finally got a hold of him, and he said he wasn't coming. He said he had other things to do. I don't know whether our son heard that or not, but I did. And I knew that we were going to have to deal with that. And I knew that there was another father out there that made a choice not to come, that other things were more important than his children. It broke our son's heart. He was never the same after that. He was old enough to realize that he may not have known that he made a choice, but he was old enough to realize that he didn't show up. That he chose other things over him. And I don't know if that still impacts him to this day, but it impacted him for a long time as a child. And he was very sad and very withdrawn. And helping him work through that as a little guy, 5, maybe 6 years old. He might have been 7 at the time, but he wasn't any older than that. That was impossible from our perspective. And yet we had to do it. We had to help him. We had to help him regulate. These are the kind of damages that you guys are doing to your kids by ignoring them, mothers or fathers. These are the kind of damages that you're doing as a custodial parent by teaching your kids anger and hatred and vitriol against the parent that's not there. These are the impact that you are making upon these children's lives and their emotions, and it is not fair. You are there to be their protector. You are there to hold them safe in a world of monsters, not be another monster that they have to learn to navigate. Teaching our children to deal with trauma response and childhood fear is another thing. Another deeply personal story. 2 of our older children, Dez's biological kids, they went for their summer visit with their bio dad, and he refused to return them. You want to talk about going through hell? He abducted them. They were taken to a place where we didn't know for sure where they were. They were hidden from us. They weren't put in school. They weren't allowed to talk to us. They weren't allowed to talk to anybody. This is back in the day before cell phones. And we were told by the children after that they returned home that when they would leave, that they would take the cordless phone with them so that they couldn't call for help. 8 months. 8 months. I had to watch Des suffer in a way that you can't imagine any parent would ever suffer. I think she talked to him twice over those 8 months. Even to the point where showing up at the courthouse, they weren't allowed to talk to her. She had to have supervised visitation because of the allegations that were made and the quote-unquote supposed reasons for all of this. And at the very end of all this, in the 8 months of hell, I'm not going to recount here, but the children were not well taken care of. They were subject to a lot of trauma out there, and some of it by family members, and some by family members that were angry at us. At the end of the 8 months, he ended up returning them, not because he thought it was safe, but because it was a ruse in the first place. He didn't want to pay child support. And when it became difficult, and when they became difficult to manage, as kids will, he realized that 2 children was a lot more work than what he wanted to deal with, and so just dropped everything. The courts ordered everything be dropped, and we could go and get the kids. And that was it. We went to pick up these children that had been lied to for months about what they were being told was going on in our house in Florida, as opposed to where their biological dad lived, and coached in how to say the right things so the judge would understand, and just all the different things you can imagine. They were glad to be home, but one of them suffered from migraines, still emotionally traumatized to this day because of that time. They both dealt with it in ways that I can't even understand. There was not a lot of opportunity after that for us to alter any of those impacts because it had been so long that the emotional impact of that was so deeply ingrained in them that there was no unpacking it. We had to be there for them. We had to love them. We had to show them consistency. And to this day, I still love all of my children as if they were very small and need to be protected. And I have to remind myself that they're all adults, and a lot of them are in their 30s at this point. But I still want to envelop them and protect them and make sure that they're safe and that they're happy. You're not protecting your children by keeping them from their other parent. Don't lie to yourself. Stop lying to yourself about that. All you're doing is prolonging the inevitable and making them resent you more. You may even believe it, but sometimes you also are using that as a cover to justify your own feelings of anger and hatred. And sometimes you're just trying to hurt your ex, but you're calling it love and you're dressing it up in this fancy bow that society for some reason fucking accepts, and I don't understand that at all. This doesn't have anything to do with mothers or fathers. This is adults that hate each other using children as weapons. And I'm going to tell you again, like I did last week, do not weaponize your children. Stop it. All you're doing is hurting the children. Your kids are going to get hurt in situations anyway. You're never going to protect them from everything. And as these stories and examples show, make a conscious decision to tell them the truth. If they're going to be hurt, allow life to play out as it will. You don't need to expose them to physical danger. But you know what? Maybe the other parent is on drugs, an alcoholic, or what have you. Facilitate circumstances where they can visit with them in a safe environment and see how they truly are. You're not hiding anything from them by not showing them this. Yes, it's easier, but it's not easier for the child. And ultimately, you're doing harm long term. This is hard to do as parents. And you know what? There's going to be a lot of feedback. And before you start to push back on me in the comments, understand I did all of this. I did all of this either through state mandated, or we did all of this through personal interaction. Des and I took a lot of steps to make sure that these children were able to interact with their parents. And I want to clarify one thing real quick. Whenever I say I'm talking about Des and myself, because we together were able to provide these children with this safe environment in this life, because she was able to handle her home life. She was able to take care of them. She was able to stay home and be there for what they needed to be, allowing me to go out and work and be able to provide them the life that they needed and be able to, both of us, give them the example. So I'm not discounting her power in any of the relationship, but I can only tell stories from my perspective. I know what she did, but I don't know everything that she did. But the fact that there was two of us there, it made it easier. But it's not impossible if there's only one of you. And even if you feel like it's impossible, it doesn't matter, because you created this child. It's your responsibility to do the hard things to make sure that their life is as good and level as possible. And by level, I just mean stable. But stable is such an overused term, because stable can be anything. Level just means that the child has the ability to start from somewhere, that if they fall down, they know they're going to hit the ground and they're going to be protected. But remember, if you continue to, quote, protect them from the other parent, you're going to idolize that other parent in these children's eyes. And I explained why earlier. I'm not going to go over that again. Your children are also going to start to resent you, because instead of understanding that that parent is choosing to stay away, they're resenting you because you're forcing that parent to stay away. It may not be true, but you have to look at this through a child's eyes. They may eventually understand the truth, but they may never reconcile the truth, and you're emotionally connected. That emotional connection to your children is done. You killed it by protecting them. So grow up, get over your emotions, and do what you need to do to allow the other parent to be in that child's life. You can't control whether they do or not, but you can facilitate the circumstances to give them the opportunity to do that. I'm going to reiterate this again. Some parents need guardrails. It's your responsibility as the custodial parent to put them in place and still provide the opportunity for the child, because no matter how big a piece of shit your ex is, you need to provide the opportunity so that your children can see the truth about what that parent is, and then deal. Yes, you have to deal with the fallout on the backside. The thing is, if you're protecting them or not, you're still dealing with the fallout on the backside. All you've done is change the game and shift the blame from the parent that earned it and put it on you and made them resent you instead of that parent for the choices that they've made. It's such a fucked up dichotomy that we think we're protecting our children, and we're just not. Allow them to experience life. You don't want your children to get hurt, but I got bad news for you guys. Life doesn't give a shit if your children get hurt. Life doesn't care if your children get hurt when they're younger. Life doesn't give a shit if it hurts you as adults. Teach your children how to deal with pain, how to deal with emotional chaos, instead of protecting them from it and allowing them to try and figure it out for themselves. Grow up. Make it your responsibility to take care of your children. They need you. They need both of you. You may not understand that, but don't make yourself the villain because you're trying to play the hero. It never works. Our children pick up on more than we understand as adults. And I meant to touch base on this earlier, that they try and figure things out. And oftentimes they'll figure it out wrong, but it's always creative and interesting. And I love speaking to little kids and that age, which is between 6 and 8, 6 and 9, sometimes a little older than that, where they're not believing everything that's put in front of them. They're trying to figure stuff out for themselves. It's so cool listening to them come up with their different solutions and the different things that they puzzle out for themselves. Well, they do this emotionally too. We got to remember that through childhood awareness, it's real easy to turn children into emotional dumpsters because of this. You need to watch how you talk around your children. You need to watch how you talk about your ex around your children, how you talk about other people around your children, and just the general way that you speak around your children, because they're very intuitive. They will figure things out. Or at the very most basic, they'll think that the right way to be is that level of anger and hatred, and they start to be that way because they emulate their parents that they're around and that they look up to. Just assume that they overhear everything, even when you're trying not to. I mean, we all got, hey, this is tall talk. That was the statement in our house. Go on and play. Little pictures have big ears. That was the statements in my parents' house when I was a kid. Children should be seen and not heard. Well, you know what? We heard everything. And if we were told not to listen, we jumped through hoops to listen, because it was going to be the good, juicy stuff, even if we didn't know specifically what it was. The other thing is, some children, because of their natural inborn curiosity, and I was this kid, they're insanely easy to talk to. And sometimes we end up talking to them about adult stuff that we don't need to be talking to them about. Protecting your children from adult situations that they're not emotionally equipped to deal with is our responsibility. And that means to shut the fuck up sometimes. When I was a kid, there was one of my friend's parents, and I didn't know it at the time, but they were starting to go through a divorce. So spending the night at his house, we were playing Monopoly, we were all sitting around, and I was just a curious kid. They had a 2-parent household, and they lived a completely different lifestyle than we did. They were not poor. They had things in their house that I didn't know what they were. I was constantly asking his mom questions, just asking her about this, asking her about that, and kid questions. I remember one question I asked her is, does she ever, when the candle's done, does she ever reuse the wax because it still smells good? And she told me, well, sometimes I'd heat the wax up and I'll put it in a little sachet and I'll put it in my drawers, makes my clothes smell good. Just questions like that maybe a kid wouldn't normally ask, but everything fascinated me. We didn't have candles at our house, and we barely had food. We were sitting there that night talking, and I was asking her questions. I don't even remember what prompted it. I don't even remember what she talked about, but she started talking about, I think I was asking questions about 2 parents being in the house, and unknowingly that they were about to go through a divorce at that time. It was fascinating to me that there were 2 parents there, that he had his dad around all the time, and they did cool stuff together. But I didn't really relate to his dad because I'd only ever grown up around my mom and sisters at that point. So I was talking to his mom, and I was asking her questions, and she started talking about how you need to spend time with each other, and you need to stay in love with each other, and you need to, and I may be filling in here because I don't remember exactly, but I remember going, whoa, this is a very adult conversation. These are very adult topics. I don't know what's going on here. And at the end, she apologized. She said, none of that really applies to you, and I apologize. I shouldn't have said any of that. But I'd already heard it at that point. And I knew there's probably something that I couldn't do anything about. I really wanted to say something because she was obviously hurting, but it wasn't my place. And hell, I was just a kid. So understand, children are intuitive, but they also pick up on everything that we say, whether we're saying it to them or whether we're saying it around them. Be careful. Mind your tongue. And mind what you say about people. They pick up on everything. They can pick up on your tone. They pick up on your posture. They pick up on emotional tension. They pick up on stress. Even when the words that you're saying are the right ones, if your body language is different, they understand that. And that cognitive dissonance really creates a big issue for them because they don't understand how to emotionally regulate already. And they watch you not emotionally regulating, or they figured out you're straight up lying about whatever it is you're feeling. So for age appropriate situations, tell them what's really going on. You don't have to tell them in full detail, but tell them how you're feeling and make it the truth because they already know. They're small humans. They're not small adults. And if you don't teach them now while they're young, that emotional dysregulation will grow exponentially as they get older, and it will create so many problems as teenagers, even as adults. They connect the dots. Sometimes they'll get it right and they'll connect the dots you wish you hadn't. Sometimes they'll get it wrong. If you don't give them that roadmap and tell them where they connected it wrong or give them the tools that they need to be able to put the dots together correctly, then you're doing your children a disservice. You're not hiding anything from them. You're only lying to yourself about what you're doing there. Given all this, what do kids actually need from us as adults? They need emotional safety. And I talked about this at the beginning. They need hugs. They need love. They need affection. They need praise. They need correction. They need boundaries. They need skills to emotionally regulate. They don't need to be taught how to feel. They need to be taught how to manage how they feel. And when they're hurting, they need to be taught that that's okay, that that's not a bad thing. When they're angry, they need to be taught that that's okay, and they need to be taught how to focus that anger, how to express that anger in a positive manner. They need to be taught that emotions are not negative or positive. Emotions simply are emotions, and it doesn't make them a bad person because they feel anger, because they feel sad, or because they miss their parent that's not there, even though their other parent that is there is telling them that they shouldn't be. They don't need more judgment. They need guidance. They need love. They need affection. And if you don't know how to do this, it's your responsibility as an adult to fucking figure it out. Get out there and learn. Go talk to somebody that does know how to do it. Go take a class on it. Go watch a YouTube video, for God's sake. Do something that teaches you how to relate to your children. If you need some place to start, go watch every episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. But don't pay attention like you did when you were a kid. Pay attention to how Fred interacts with the children and what he does to reinforce everything associated with that. One of the masters in making children feel safe, loved, and accepted almost instantly. It's your responsibility, parents, whether you like it or not. You see, in these broken relationships and even in these tense relationships at home, we create these fights, we create these wars, but every bullet that's lobbed back and forth, every piece of shrapnel, every bit of fallout that comes from these emotional wars of the parents falls onto and into the children and passes right through them, whether we're trying to protect them or not. Protect your children at all costs. Save them from everything but reality. Teach them how to deal with reality, but don't be the reason that they end up having these emotional traumas as they get older. If you're not the parent that's creating these problems for your children, then teach them how to deal with the problems that are being created for them by the other parent. And if this message has pissed you off to this point and you're for some reason still here, you are that parent that's creating the emotional problem for your children, and you need to grow the fuck up. You need to stop it. You need to start being there for your children. You need to start getting over it with your ex, even if they're a pain in the ass, and start doing what you need to do for your children, and not always showing up and being the candy and cake and popcorn and peanuts parent. Teach them what life is like. Teach them what reality is, and take advantage of the time that you do have. And I don't give a shit if the split is fair or not. If you got to jump through a million hoops to do it, you do whatever you have to do to spend time with your children. Period. That's it. Overcome yourself, get over yourself, and quit acting like a petulant teenager. The only way that you're going to break these cycles is by you acting like an adult and doing what you need to do, and then showing your children how to do that so that they don't have to deal with the same stupid shit that you dealt with growing up. And you might be some of that stupid shit that they're having to deal with. So you need to stop that as well. And yes, it's hard. And yes, you may not want to. And yes, there may be a laundry list of a million reasons why your spouse or your ex hurt you, none of which has anything to do with your children. You might be tired. You might be broke. They don't want your money. They want you. And if you're tired, sometimes just curling up and watching TV with them for a little while, or just having a conversation with them, giving them a safe space to know that they're loved is enough, where there's no anger and there's no hatred and there's no resentment. Drop all of that the moment you pick your children up. There's a lot of angry defenders out there. There's a lot of wounded adults out there, and I've really kind of poked those wounds. But until you open these, until you remove the bandages from these wounds, you're not going to get any better. And your children's lives are never going to get any better. Listen, folks, you've been with me. And if you're still here, I appreciate this. And if you're pissed off at me and you're still here, I really appreciate you. I'm going to do something I haven't done before. I don't like to leave problems with no solutions. About 15 years ago, I wrote my first book, the manual, what every guy's dad should have taught him. In here is some basic information. The number one editorial review I got was, "This reads like a manifesto and an instruction manual, and nobody will ever buy it." So fine. People bought it. People liked it. This is not a promotion for that. What this is if you're looking for some basic skills in how to run a household, and it works for women, it works for men, it doesn't matter. It's just called the manual because it's a catchy title, and I'm a man, and it's everything I wish my dad had taught me. It talks about how to have a relationship. I'm going to be doing some courses and some classes that I'm going to give away for free on how to have relationships, on how to establish rules of engagement, on how to do some of the stuff I've talked about in here. But for now, I'm going to give that book away for anybody that reaches out to me. And I don't care whether you're in the comments section, whether you DM me, it doesn't matter. I'm going to give that book away. Never done that before. It's always been for sale, but I'm going to let you have it with two things. One, that you engage with the platform. Send me a comment. Send me where this hit, why you're asking for it, what you think you need, what hurt, what didn't, and that you make a true commitment to making your children's lives better. The one small thing that you can do, that you will do today to make your children's lives better, I want you to share that with me. If you'll do both of those, I'll give you the book for free, and I'll answer any questions that you got. I love you guys. I hope this makes your lives better. I hope that you can take some of this pain and trauma that we've experienced and gone with, and you can learn from it, and you can make your kids' lives better. Like, subscribe. You're going to see the clips for this all over social media, but you're going to want to catch this entire episode. Love y'all. Peace.